Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a great privilege and honor to introduce el excelentísimo señor presidente.
His Excellency, the President of the United States of Mexico, Vicente Fox.
Some opening remarks, and then we will go to questions. Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Good night. And yes, I'd like to start with a message, a presentation, to give the opportunity then to come into questions and a dialogue. So I'll try to do it quick and fast. I come before you today after 2 years that I was here with a new message. A message in order to build trust in government, we must link together economic and social policies. This is not the time to change principles, but to ensure inclusion into development. The 21st century arrived with important changes, and nations are realigning in the face of the new challenges it poses. There is no doubt that the world is different today. There is no doubt that the world is changing and will continue to do so along paths that are still unpredictable. As Václav Havel said, everything is possible, but nothing is certain. We must therefore always be ready with an economy as flexible and competitive as possible. However, at the same time, as we prepare to face these challenges, in Mexico and the world, we must successfully wage a battle that we have been unable to win, the battle against poverty and exclusion. We cannot close our eyes to the millions of people in the world who live in conditions of poverty. We cannot be blind to the growing and dramatic gap between the richest and the poorest countries. Poverty is humanity's greatest challenge. Poverty truly is the enemy to defeat. Poverty suffocates the hopes and dreams of our young people. Poverty leads to exclusion, hate, and conflict. We all know in our hearts that something is wrong when we see the pain caused by poverty anywhere in the world. The truth is that we have not done a good job. We cannot feel satisfied with the results. None of us wants a world in which a substantial part of humanity lives on the edge of death by starvation. The 20th century saw different theories of development that came along. However, most of humanity, these were insufficient. We have to conceive a new way of linking the economy to social values. We have to recognize that the fundamental variables of the economy are as important as the variables of a just and human society. Let us learn from history. Let us recognize that the rationality of markets is not enough to solve the problem of poverty. A simple change of emphasis and attitude is not enough. Policies based on handouts are not enough. These measures are not enough in the profoundly divided and unequal societies that span most of the world today. Market-focused development policies are currently target of a strong criticism in many world forums, including here in Davos. Citizens and organizations from different parts of the world are demanding us to change our way of thinking on how to promote a greater economy and social development in our countries, to change our policies, our strategies, and our way of relating to the world. to change in order to build a new era of democratic cooperation and shared responsibility, in which the developing countries commit themselves to responsible economic policies. The developed countries accept to commit themselves in solidarity with the countries with lower incomes, and both show it in deeds. We must change, but change to build, not to destroy. This involves recognizing two things. On the one hand, to acknowledge that it is not the time to change principles. It is not the time to abandon our commitment to the opening of the economy, deregulation of markets, healthy public finances, responsible monetary policy, and greater involvement by the private sector in the economy. It is not the time to change principles. It is not the time to abandon our commitment to the so-called second-generation reforms, our commitment to development of a flexible and reliable legal and institutional infrastructure, and to a modern, effective, transparent public administration. On the other hand, it is time to acknowledge that neither the Washington Consensus nor second-generation reforms will free from poverty the millions of people who can wait no longer. Overcoming poverty is a complex task, probably the most complex. It requires not only will, but also imagination, resources, and perseverance. But the starting point is finding a new engine of growth. The engine I propose is a strong expansion of the economic citizenship and a democratization of the economy worldwide, with the participation and involvement of population segments and countries that find themselves today excluded. A broad program of economic inclusion that unleashes the energy of the millions who have remained on the sidelines of development. This is not only desirable, it is possible. Let us reject the old paradigms, the closed ideologies, and the false dilemmas that led us to choosing between the market and the state. We need more market and a better state. We need a global development strategy that integrates competition, efficiency, with equality of opportunities and solidarity. We need active social policies centered on dignity, freedom, and people's capabilities so that they can take advantage of opportunities. We need and we must link together economic and social policies. In short, we have to put into practice a new economic humanism. Friends, if we want to prosper together, let us recognize that the fight against poverty and exclusion is the fight for peace, for social justice, for the future of all. We cannot follow a path that privileges the few and condemns the many. Let us remember that the world belongs to all of us. Let us fully respond to the emotion and hope that the new times and humanity's new agenda have awoken throughout the world. If we want progress, if we want equity among nations, each and every country, each and every one of us must be ready to change, to go further. Let us not ask whether We give ourselves the satisfaction of supporting the less developed regions and countries. Let us ask whether we can afford not to do so. The only outcome we can accept is the reduction of poverty year by year, month by month, and day by day. We're entering a new stage of history, a century marked by two major world wars has ended. On entering the third millennium, humanity has the opportunity to build a different future, a future of bridges instead of walls, a future of inclusion, understanding, and association. But that future has to be achieved, has to be built patiently, with the participation of each and every country. Only those we will find a new engine for the economy. This is why, in order to build trust in government, we must link together economic and social policies. This is not the time to change principles, but to ensure inclusion into development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, in your message, you called for a democratization of the economy and you called for economic inclusion in order to fight poverty and create opportunities. And I would like to ask you a first part of the question at the national level, Mexico, and then at the global level. At the national level, you have been promoting important structural changes within your country. You put forward the fiscal reforms that did not go through Congress. You are now promoting reforms, for example, in the electrical sector, which is strategic to economic growth. How do you feel about these reforms moving forward? Will they be approved, and what other types of reforms are you looking to?
Yes, we have three main reforms. One is fiscal, where we must come back to negotiation, lobbying, and constructing the strategy and the structure of that new fiscal agenda with opposition parties and with Congress. So we have to build in the adequate conditions to be able to move on this issue. It is indispensable to Mexico. Then we have the energy reform, which is right now in Congress and should be discussed on this next ordinary period of Congress, starting as March 1st, and we hope we can get that reform approved. In the meantime, we're not just seeing time go by. In the meantime, we have formulas that attract participation of private investment in producing energy in Mexico. And this formula has been very successful. With this, we have been able to cope with the needs of electricity and now with the needs of increased oil and its products that derive from oil. So at this point in time in Mexico, private investment can come and participate on energy generation for the moment. And we will still be insisting on approve this initiative. We have labor law also ready in Congress, has a strong consensus and should be approved on this next same period. As I said, we are pushing forward these reforms, but in the meantime, we have developed formulas to keep on investing in Mexico. Just on energy, this year, investment will run on the levels of $20 billion for energy production.
We're going to our participants in a minute, Mr. President, but this same democratization of the economy that you have called for at the global level reminds me of Doha, what many call the illusion of having a development round. And as we get ready to hold a follow-up ministerial meeting in Cancun, it seems that in some sectors there is a belief that the steam is coming out of Doha. In effect, we went to our business participants with a poll last week, and a majority of our business participants did not say that the Doha round would be a successful round. What are your remarks on that, since you will be very much involved in Cancun?
Yes. Well, that seems to be the story around the rounds of trading discussions. And the case of Doha raised up a very positive and optimistic spirit. And we want to continue and maintain that optimistic spirit. Mexico is a good example of what trading liberalization can do for a country. Today, we are the 7th largest trading economy in the world and the 9th largest economy in the world. And most of it is because Mexico opened up its economy. Mexico has trade agreements with 32 different countries, and this is what has permitted that we expand our economy and create the jobs that we need. So with that spirit, with that commitment, with that success story and example, we are going to be pushing forward the discussions that will come on next September in Mexico. We think that it's indispensable to work on the subsidies, particularly those that have to do with food and agriculture, because there is where this huge gap and these big differences between developed countries and underdeveloped comes from. Most of underdeveloped countries will depend heavily on their agricultural output and the need for encountering open markets and no subsidies to compete fairly on the markets.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, the gentleman right here, please. If you will wait for one of the microphones, please, that will be passed to you.
Mr. President, what is the correlation that you see, if at all, between poverty and terrorism? And if you see a deep correlation, then don't you think that the resources should be diverted from fighting terrorism to fighting poverty? What is your view?
I think they are totally different issues, totally separate apart. Poverty does not and should not explain terrorism. Terrorism is a cancer on humanity. Terrorism must be eradicated from the face of the earth. And it's very encouraging this last months and years, the attitude that the whole world, and specifically democracies on the world, have taken to eradicate this evil of terrorism from the global arena. But that doesn't mean that we don't have also big challenges, especially on this problem of poverty that you mentioned. But the tools to improve on income of people are totally different than the one we need to use to fight terrorism.
Do we have another question? Right here.
Mr. President, should you get a majority in the Chamber of Deputies after the July 6 elections, will you try again to get a fiscal reform enacted in the country?
Well, yes, I tried to explain that we are trying to build the appropriate conditions so that a fiscal reform can go through in Mexico. And as I said, it's highly needed, because right now fiscal income runs around 11.5% of gross product. And we need much more than that, just to be on the level that other countries, even Latin American countries or worldwide countries have, which most of them will be over 20% of gross income, what represents their fiscal income. So we will keep on working on this with intelligence, with dialogue, looking for those consensus and putting through that reform. In the meantime, again, we're working on having a government that costs less and does much more with that is efficient, highly efficient, and renders good productivity on fiscal income, which is so limited. Also, we work heavily on this private-public or public-private formula so that we can link together private investment incentivized by public investment, by fiscal investment, so that we multiply the limited resources that we have. And through this formula is where we are finding the resources sufficient to comply with the needs of infrastructure on highways, ports, and airports, infrastructure on water or water treating plants, as well as we're working on housing and we're working on energy through this public-private formula. So again, as I said before, we don't just lay our hands down and let's see time going through. We do come with intelligent, with creative, innovative formulas to cope with the needs of investment in our country.
Right here, the first row. Just wait for the microphone, please, for a minute. There, please,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you, Mr. President. Just one question. How do you see the Latin American integration? Do you believe, and what will be the role of Mexico in this big project? Thank you.
Well, all of a sudden we have many problems that presented themselves throughout Latin America. Fortunately, and I have to say this, Mexico is completely separated apart. It's totally differentiated by the markets. We enjoy, fortunately today, a very strong stability and fundamentals of the economy. But yes, there are problems in Latin America that some of them, the case of Argentina, in the case of Brazil, seem to be now picking up and moving ahead. I'm sure they will face very big challenges to the future. But if we accompany them on their process, and if world institutions, specifically world financial institutions, give their support to those processes, I'm absolutely convinced that they will pretty soon be back on their feet and growing, healthy, growing, and distributing income. We have the case of Venezuela and Colombia, different also. One has political instability and has to find a way out. There is now this group of friend countries of Venezuela, where Mexico is participating in trying to work out with Venezuela a solution to the problem. This group of friend nations has put one condition, and it is the free acceptance of the two parties in conflict for this group to participate together with the Organization of American States. So again, I'm optimistic that through that process we could get an answer to the problem. And President Uribe, understand he's here, he's working hard to bring back rule of law, to bring back peace to his country. I think that we must all be around him, ready to participate and help on whatever we can. And this is the position that we have in Mexico, to be near President Uribe and wait for him to let us know what we can do to the process. And I know I had some conversation with him that we have to work on the economy also, not only on the peace process, but also on the economy. And there we're linking together to work to see if we can make some synergy between our two economies.
Right here.
Mr. President, I have a question about values. I understand that you've done some very innovative and I think courageous work with your cabinet to develop a more sort of values-based, ethical-based leadership. And if I understand correctly, developed a sort of a code of conduct for public leadership. And in a world where I think we have a greater need than ever before to have public leaders with the greatest integrity, the idea of working together as a cabinet to develop that sense of integrity and values-based leadership is a very exciting one. And I wonder if you could share some of the experience of that and if I've got my story correct.
Thank you. Well, we're working on two actions. One is promoting a culture of values, not only between government, but also in society as a whole. It's preaching, it's promoting, it's convincing, it's sending messages every day on this direction. The very first day of government, we started with swearing a code of ethics, all the members of the cabinet team and those who work for government. And from there on, we've been expanding that promotion and have signed many agreements with either private institutions, ONGs, or businesses, as well as now several states and state governments in Mexico have accepted and do have their own formula of code of ethics. But on the other hand, it's not just words and messages that will change that culture. So we must put in all the actions necessary to prevent from corruption and impunity and to reinforce ethical behavior between government. And among other things, we have a law that was approved in Congress, which is full access to information and transparency as a total obligation of government now. I think that's paradigmatic in Mexico. And that law was approved in Congress and goes into practice next June. We are prepared to comply with, so that we can provide every single information that is within the hands of government will have to be released free and open to society, to media, and to everybody. And as we're taking those actions, we've done the same, for instance, on purchases, on government purchases, on licitations. All of them now have full participation of citizens and ONGs or business associations that will participate throughout the whole process and make sure that it was transparent. So many, many more actions that we're taking on that direction.
Mr. President, thank you very much. We have run out of time, but I would like to thank you for your comments with respect to your country, Latin America as a region, and your thoughts on global polity. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Gracias.
Please welcome President Fox.